Hello and welcome back to MindSpanse. My name's Craig, and I want to thank you for taking some time with me. I am in an extraordinary place called Casa Maria Luigia. It's in Modena, Italy, and it's the creation of the world-famous chef and his wife and business partner, Lara Gilmore and Massimo Bottura. And it really is a spectacular place. And I'm so blessed to have the ability to be here, and I want to share it with you. And I have a great episode today, so I want to talk about neuroplasticity. And it's a really important topic because it's really about retraining your brain. And we talk a lot about letting go of attachments and clearing our mind and all these things. But really, I wanted to focus on some science and about really how do you retrain the neural connections that are built up in your brain. It's not just this emotional programming, it's actual physical programming that takes place all the time. So what is neuroplasticity? Neuroplasticity is the ability to reorchestrate the neural connections in your brain. And historically, that was thought not to be possible. Basically, when you stopped growing, your brain was done, and you could never, of course you could learn things, but not to the extent like when you were a kid. And to some degree, I guess that's a little bit true, but they're learning more and more how to find ways to rewire as if you were a child, basically to recreate what they call these critical periods of massive plasticity when you're, even before you're born, using molecular drugs and whatnot. So they've been doing that with animals, and they've been having some great success in that. So, but notwithstanding, what I want to talk about is how do we take some of the science and use it and apply it to change the way we think about things, from sadness and pain and anger and fear. Because all these things are learned responses that we've developed and built over many years. And I've certainly had videos talking about how to let go and untangle those things, but I want to go right into hacking the brain on this episode so you can see how that can all work for you and elevate your daily life here in Modena, Italy. Ciao. Anyway, so let's take a big stretch. Breathe in that Italian fresh summer air. Relax, shake your shoulders. The food here is unbelievable too. Everything here is pretty much unbelievable. It's in this Emilia-Romagna region, which is sort of this big valley, very fertile, and of course they also have Ferrari and Maserati and Bugatti. Best food, best cars. Best cheese, Parmesan cheese, balsamic vinegar, that aged 500-year-old balsamic vinegar. Good stuff. So anyway, so let's talk about hacking your brain. So what really happens? So what happens when you're born is that you get exposed. Your brain is sort of very malleable, in the sense that it hasn't formed a lot of connections. In fact, your eye is not connected to your brain right before you're born. That happens afterwards, or during and afterwards. And that allows you to also have dual vision, right? So that the retina cells go and intertwine and create neural connections that actually intertwine with each other, so that you can see. And I'm not a doctor, but that's what I've been reading about. It's pretty cool. So all of this stuff is happening so that, and the reason for this, and the reason why we develop so slowly relative to animals who are born with the ability to do all this stuff, is that we're programmed. We have the ability to be programmed for our environment, whether it's any language we can speak, whether it's hot or cold, any type of environment that we are born into. Our brain basically gets built to adapt to that environment, whatever that may be. And actually, there's something called synaptic pruning, which basically means anything you don't need gets pruned away. And so as a result of that, people thought that once you sort of stopped growing, basically you were not able to build new functional neural connections, or at least permanent and very complex structures at that point. And so the idea is like you couldn't learn to speak fluently a language the same way you could when you're a baby being exposed to multiple languages, and you can speak 2 or 3 or 4 languages totally fluently, whereas an adult they felt that was impossible, and that doesn't seem to be the case anymore, and they keep learning more and more about it. But what I want to talk about as it relates to that is, so as you go through this, these connections get stronger and stronger and stronger. And we talk about, how when you impose energy on something, then your brain helps you, whatever that may be, if it's healing or overcoming something or whatever it is. And your brain is designed to help you, but they now know it really is designed to help you, and it actually will prune stuff that's not designed to help you. The problem is the brain doesn't know what that means exactly. So if you put energy into being upset all the time about something, your brain doesn't know that that's not what you want. It thinks that's what you want. So it basically creates neural connections that help you to be upset more. I know that's horrible, but that's true. And it goes, so all these negative things, there's a great story I was reading about a guy he was a doctor also, and he had some chronic acute injury, and then it turned into acute injury and turned to chronic pain. More broad-based, regular, all the time kind of pain around his neck and shoulders. And he sort of started learning about this neuroplasticity stuff and started imagining every time he felt pain. And he was thinking, as an experiment, maybe all this pain is just because I keep reinvesting my energy in this pain, and maybe I could help it by imagining it away. And so he started a process of basically, he had scans of his pain centers, when it was very active, when it was not active, and when it was medium in the middle. And he imagined those scans. And so every time he felt pain, he would walk himself from super pain to not so much pain to a completely pain-free scan. Brain scan. And he did that, and he did that, and he did that, and nothing happened, unfortunately. And he kept doing it, and he kept investing his time and energy, and every time, and like a month or 2 into it, he started to have some less pain. Maybe it was only 10 or 20 minutes at a time, but it was noticeable for him. And so he kept at it. And by the end of the first year, he had reduced most of his pain. And maybe he was just healing, but I think that there's something to be said for rewiring the experiences that we're feeling in a way that's more positive, and therefore the brain, because if you think about it, pain is just the recognition of an electronic signal, right? It's not like a thing. It's like, there's an electronic signal hits a nerve, and that registers as pain to us to say, hey, you got to do something about this. And so if you invest a lot of money in that, a lot of time in that pain, energy in that pain, then you're going to have a lot more neural connections focused on pain, right? So it makes sense to me. And so what I think is really important is when you really absorb that's true, that a lot of it's not just emotional learnings, it's actual neural connected learning, like neural connected behavior that your brain thinks is actually helping you. And it took me a while to really absorb that, because once you really get it, then you can start changing your mind and really focusing on reprogramming your brain in that way. So every time you face a situation, don't just think of it as like letting go and letting it pass through, but really rewiring your brain, saying, I'm going to do the opposite. I'm going to feel the opposite way. So every time I'm in a situation that makes me feel upset or sad, I'm going to laugh and say, that's not, I'm like, whatever, you know. And I'm going to just start to rewire my brain for good and happiness and success. I mean, think about, everyone will say this, but it's so true. It really is. It's not just cliche, but we are our own worst enemy. We punish ourselves. We put restraints on ourselves. We basically are the limiters of our success. And it's so easy to blame society and the outside world, but at the end of the day, most of us are self-imposed restrictions in terms of our ability to be successful in whatever that may be, right? And there's no reason for that. There's no reason that we need to have those things. But what happens is the more we invest in those restrictions, the more they get hardwired into our brain. And so it becomes, and they get bigger and stronger because our brain thinks it's helping us. So you then have to say, I can do this. You know, you will it. I can do this. And expect that it's going to take time. Because think about how many years it took to get to this point. To get to the point we are today. And I don't think it's going to take the same amount of years to go back, but it's not going to happen overnight. But if you stick at it, you can start to rewire your neural connections in a much more positive and productive way. And then all of a sudden, your world's going to change, right? It's actually really amazing. Like, if you think about what we've been through, you know, when your habits change, when you really change all your habits, your whole world changes, right? Like, your perspective changes, what you want to do changes, how you think about things changes. And so just changing your daily routine has a huge impact on your life, because your brain starts rewiring immediately. So imagine your mental routine. So starting to really change up your mental routine. And the one way is to start observing your mental routine so you know what to change, because we get into this autonomous behavior where we just keep going, like the ever ready bunny. So we don't think about it too much. And so first thing is to observe and really understand how you operate in all ways. And then pick one or two things. Pick one thing and just say, I'm going to start rewiring my brain on this one thing. And then pick another thing. And little by little, I think you'll realize that just the process of doing that is going to help build better neural connectivity to assist you, number one, in this process, and number two, to really rewire the way you think about things. I was a smoker for a long time, and I thought I could never quit. You know, I'd always say, I'm not a quitter. That was my excuse. I'm not a quitter. And I'm not, actually. But I said, a friend of mine gave me this book, and I read it, and it was sort of like a self-hypnosis, sort of stop smoking book. And it didn't really resonate with me, but I read it again. A little bit did. And there was it was actually really one piece of it that really resonated with me, which was, imagine the day that every time you have a cigarette, imagine the first time you had a cigarette. Everybody remembers that who smokes, because it's extraordinarily painful, and you really have to try to become a smoker. It's insane. And just erase it. Just choose to not have that cigarette on that first day. And I was like, that's interesting, because it's seemed to make sense. I was not a big studier of all this stuff, neuro stuff, whatever, at that point. So, but now I've been reading a lot about it and trying to study it more. And now I understand what he was getting at in that book. And so I read it a few times, and that piece always stood out to me. And so I said, I'm going to try. And it basically is non-committal. You don't have to quit smoking or anything. He said, just every time you have a cigarette, imagine that first time you had a cigarette, and imagine not having a cigarette the first time, just walking the other way. And I did that for a long time. It had no impact at all. But eventually it did, actually. Eventually it did, little by little. I started to not have the same kind of desire to smoke, the same kind of craving, and then one day I just stopped. And I still sometimes want a cigarette and whatnot, but it's just a very passing, I do the same thing. If I feel like I want it, I go back to that time and pretend like I never had it, and therefore I never had that addiction. I never had that. So, and it really has worked extraordinarily well. So I'm living proof that this technique can be extremely helpful. But you have to stick at it, and you got to stay through it, stay with it, and stay through it. And it's pretty easy. And there's so many things in our lives that we've programmed. And I think, again, I'll go back to it before I leave you all and go enjoy this amazing place, is that you need to really think about the fact that your brain is wiring to help you, and it doesn't know the difference between good or bad. It just does wherever you put your energy, that's what your brain will wire towards. There's a saying, it says, neurons that fire together wire together. It's sort of cute, but it's true. So if you not just say these things, but feel them emotionally, like come from a place deep within your heart. So maybe a little meditation, get real focused and centered, and then start this process from that place, as opposed to just some random little thought, a big thought. So get lots of things involved, lots of neurons involved in this thought process, and that tends to work a little better. So absorb that and pick something that you'd like to change, and just start saying it. It could be like, I really want to do this, and instead of saying I want to do this, I believe that you're this. Believe it. And just start believing. And little by little, you're going to see everything start to readjust. And we go back to elevate your daily life. So thank you so much. Please subscribe to the channel. Follow me on Instagram, like it, share it. And I'm going to try to do as many videos from here as I can. I did a bunch the other day, and the sound was all messed up, so I was so disappointed. But I let it go, and I'm back at it, so that you guys can appreciate it a little bit also. So have a wonderful, wonderful day, and thank you for taking some time.